All right, so we're going in the direction of more comedies because that seems to be when we really get going on these. So
Short comedies at that.
yeah, because like I was telling you, when I'm by myself, it's kind of difficult to talk about comedies. But
Hmm.
when you have somebody else, it makes it a lot easier because it almost becomes reminiscing more than anything else.
Yeah.
So we needed something. We didn't quite have an idea, and I saw these on the shelf because they're one of the first couple of movies on the shelf. I was like, well, yeah, why not just do that? Because I used to be against doing movies and their remakes or movies and their sequels, and now I'm doing that back to back this week.
Mm.
So I'm not sure which of these will go out first between the one I just shot and this one, but
What was the one you just shot?
the Freaky Fridays.
Oh, okay.
So
Did Disney Plus help you with that?
I have them both.
Oh, okay. Disney Plus has the made-for-TV one that came out after the Lohan one too.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one, but I mentioned its existence anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I figured these were easy enough, and we hadn't talked about them yet. So, and it's one of those cases where what else are you going to talk about with Ace Ventura but its sequel? Like, what else
Yeah.
can you possibly?
Ace Ventura Jr.
Uh, I was
The
trying.
animated series.
That was just when this and Dumb and Dumber got animated series. That was just a weird era. There was
The
before.
Mascot one too.
Yeah, that was
Jim
a
Carrey
case.
had like everything in it, but no animated Liar Liar series. Come on.
Yeah, he could. I would
I
have
would
loved
love to have seen animated Jerry.
and see Fletcher on different cases.
Yes.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
But that was such a weird era, especially the Ace Ventura one was the one I remembered the most, and then the Dumb and Dumber one. But it's like those were so short lived
Hmm.
that there was a long. I think it was until you got the DVD pack of the Ace Venturas that has the animated series in it.
Yeah.
Until you got those DVDs, I eventually came to the idea of I must have just been dreaming that.
Mhm.
Like that, but no, they all existed.
I just had a random thought. For the Liar Liar animated series, I'd want it to be a prequel. I want to see animated asshole Fletcher Reed do
Oh
his
yeah, of
cases.
course. Yeah, it would have to be. It couldn't be the Beetlejuice situation where for some reason he's the protagonist of the animated series.
No, but the animated series was fun enough. We just kind of let it go.
Yeah, it was good as its own thing.
Yeah. But as far as the Ace Ventura movies go, I told you before this video I had a coined phrase I was going to use. Now, you and I, some of our favorite things that we point out in comedies that crack us up is mimicry, which there's plenty of that. And the other is we love to point out when people are dicking off. In these movies, Ace Ventura is having his own dicking off festival. Like,
Wait,
I
what?
rewatched the sequel last night. He spends 70% of When Nature Calls just dicking off.
It's really funny you say that and you built it up so much. I swear to God, the very first scene of the first movie where it's like, okay, he's got the plan. He's got the fake package with God knows what breaking in it. And he's got the fake gut that he's going to replace with the dog when he gets it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a clean cut plan from somebody so bumbling.
Mm-hmm.
So him just deciding to kick and throw the package around on his way there is prime digging off.
These movies are full of dicking off because we have plans, but within these plans, we have dicking off going on. It's like he accounts for his dicking off.
Yeah, he's Ace Ventura's character is so interesting because he's usually dicking off at the wrong times, especially in the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
he's like a perfect balance of really smart and really dumb.
Yeah.
Because it's weird how he's the king of digging off, but it turns out he's really a great detective
Yeah.
for the most part. For the most part.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that Courtney Cox even tells him, "Why don't you try to be like a real Like, can you imagine that? I feel like that should have been what the sequel actually was. Was Ace in like the police academy?
That would have been great. And the sequel that we got is inferior to the original, but there's just such good dicking off going on in the sequel.
Yeah. There's actually some things I have to bring up about that, but do you want to start with the first movie?
Yeah, we'll just start at the beginning.
Should we start with the concept?
Let's start with, I said 70% for the sequel. What do you think the percentage is in the original of him dicking off? I'd say it's at least 65.
Yeah, because there's a lot of genuine detective work going on, but there's also a great balance of detective work and dicking off. Exhibit A, the ring montage. Where it's like, he's got a really good plan here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the ways he goes about doing that. It's really a great concept for a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing about that is that he really had to sell this because this was his big, big year. It was this. It was this in February. It was The Mask in the summer, and then it was Dumb and Dumber in December.
Mm-hmm.
But this was the jumping off point. Like, whether or not those succeeded, this was the first one. This was probably going to be the deciding factor on if people saw The Mask of Dumb and Dumber or not.
Yeah.
And he was, because he was off of In Living Color, and apparently, despite the fact that it made like what $200 million, it was a massive hit.
Yeah.
He was getting like backlash in his community of people saying, "This idea of a pet detective is never gonna like. This is going to be your downfall. Like, In Living Color is going to be your beat."
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he said on Howard Stern, specifically David Allen Greer was going after him, like making fun of him a lot on the set of In Living Color, going, "Dude, that movie is not going to."
Which is funny because outside of Jumanji, In the Army Now, and Crank Yankers, what's David Allen Greer done with his career?
Hey, Tales from the Hood. Let's not forget that.
Okay.
Where he went like full on scary, and it really worked. That was the same year as Jumanji too.
Now
Like,
that's not to discredit David Allen Greer. David Allen Greer is fantastic in Jumanji. Let's not discount that at all.
He's still funny as hell today.
Yeah.
Just most of the time you see him, it's like in interviews.
Yeah.
But yeah. So David Allen Greer really had to eat crow after that. And that's the thing also is talking about it basically gauging his career was when he started doing serious movies,
Mm-hmm.
which he succeeded in greatly. And it didn't take long at all for people to buy it, especially after The Truman Show and just forward.
Mm-hmm.
But like the main obstacle was he was known as the guy that talked out of his ass.
Yeah.
And that was the gauge of what he had to get past.
I mean, not only that, but you had Truman Show, which was 98, if I'm not mistaken. Before that, he had to be convincing as a creeper in The Cable Guy.
Yeah.
I rewatched The Cable Guy not too long ago. He's extremely unsettling.
Yeah. I rewatched The Cable Guy frequently.
And like I can't imagine, although I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested in how it would look. You know who the original choice for The Cable Guy was, don't you?
Farley?
Yeah, it's Chris Farley.
That would have been weird and totally different.
That's the same thing with the Shrek movies. Like, Mike Myers is synonymous with Shrek, but I would love to have seen what Chris Farley had in mind.
Yeah.
Chris Farley was taken from us far too soon.
Yeah, we were just talking right before this video that we might be visiting him before too long.
Yeah.
But what's funny about that though, and I think just shows how great Carrey's career is that the talking out of the ass thing is what he had to get past in order to go to another part of his career.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like, you think that's like it's basically the lowest he has sunk, is I think what the idea is.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just the lowest possible form of humor. It's just him talking to Tone Loc out of his ass. Yeah, honestly, that
He
scene
only
is.
uses that gag in the sequel one time.
Yeah, and maybe I'm alone in this, but that first scene where he talks to Tone Loc out of his ass
Mm-hmm.
is still funny. Because think about because we grew up on this. Like I will never remember the first time I saw this because it was just ingrained in our minds as we grew up.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking about somebody that saw this in February of 1994 for the first time, and how out of nowhere it must have seemed that Tone Loc is sitting there at his desk working, and that's how Ace enters the scene. And then I love the moment even more when his ass gets pissed off and his chair is like moving. It's like, that is still funny to me. It's the lowest of the low in humor, and he made it so funny it still works for me.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. They could have brought it down to a fart joke.
Yeah. Well, there is the do you have a mental? I think that's the closest we get. And that's funny too that he asks for a mint. It's, I mean, maybe that's where my humor is when I watch this movie, but this is how it is.
It's just funny that 10 years later he would be in one of these, in a profound movie that people celebrate so much. Like, you watch Ace Ventura and you're like, that can't possibly be the same guy in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah. And not only that, but you talk about like the impact of the Truman Show and how a lot of people consider the Truman Show prophetic.
Yeah.
It's like, this is where he really took off.
I will always stand by that one of my favorite performances of his is also I Love You, Philip Morris.
Yeah. I think, did we even mention Man on the Moon yet?
No.
But,
Well,
yeah,
I feel like biopics are kind of cheating, though.
Yeah, and this really is like, I mean, it's been brought up multiple times once people finally like notice, like the people that had to look it up that weren't around at the time. But it's like, how many times do you see an actor get a year like Jim Carrey's 1994?
It's a pretty good year.
And you've got stuff, and I think another thing that makes it work so much is that it's so big and broad. Like, you've got the stuff him talking out of his ass. You've got the slapstick of like the ring montage and stuff like that. But then there's also just sort of little details here that are really funny that don't draw attention to themselves. Like at the beginning when he's hiding from Margolis, and he grabs like the giant plant and walks by the window. And when he discards it when he goes to the door, there's a whole stack of those there. Like, he's done this like every day. And I love the idea because it becomes such a trait of his that you forget about the fact that we see its origin in the movie. At the beginning, when Tex Cobb smashes his windshield.
Yeah.
For the rest of the whole movie, the windshield is broken, and it completely changes how he drives.
And it makes sense to the story because if he can't afford to pay his rent, surely he's not be able to afford to replace his windshield. But I also love like his little lines, like when he's eating the sunflower seeds in Courtney Cox's office, and she asks him for an ashtray, and his response is just, "I don't smoke."
And then the follow-up of, it's a disgusting habit as he's doing something disgusting.
And I love how the sunflower seeds do make a comeback in the sequel.
But then there's one scene that kind of stands out because, and I think I saw this. I feel like I saw this movie, even though we owned it. I feel like I saw this movie more on TV than our actual copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a scene that I never remembered seeing that much was the added scene. It's like that like all the VHSs and DVDs have that little thing that says includes footage that was not seen theatrically, but it's the one scene where he pretends to be the dolphin trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that scene always really sticks out to me because I feel like I barely ever saw it. So like the only way that could be is if we saw the TV version more than the home copy or whatever.
Yeah. I think what else helps this movie is it's surrounded, like I said, it's a dicking off festival. But with the actual competence as he shows as a director, for a movie like this, it's actually a decent mystery.
Yeah.
I mean, the twist at the end is very outlandish, but it's a decent ride to get there.
Yeah, because when we get Ray Finkel and Einhorn's backstories,
mm-hmm.
it's like genuinely creepy.
Yeah.
Like it's creepy enough when we see Ray's bedroom,
mm-hmm.
but then when we get the newspaper article that says Einhorn was a hiker that went missing, it's like really creepy.
Yeah. And it's all discovered by this character that spends most of the movie dicking off.
He discovers it wearing a tutu. But he plays the moment kind of like when he comes up, like when he finds a break in the case, he like plays it straight.
Yeah.
But then you also get moments where it does go genuinely dark, but he goes about it in a comedic way. It finds a perfect balance.
Mm-hmm.
Because the apartment scene in Roger Actor's apartment
mm-hmm.
it's like it's genuinely good detective work, but he shows it off in the most comedic way possible.
Yeah, he showboats it.
Yeah.
It's what he does. He's so proud of himself that when he reveals it, he showboats it and nobody takes him seriously. Because of the way he showboated it.
All the way up to his Zelda Rubinstein impression from Poltergeist.
Yeah.
And yes, I cannot hear her say that in Poltergeist without hearing Carrie do it. There was also going also on the deleted scene that was added.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of other things in this movie that were taken out at the last minute. Have you ever heard about any of these?
I don't think so.
Where the movie was significantly darker at one point. Like, for instance...
In the words of LBJ and Forrest Gump, I kind of like to see that.
Well, here's one. And once you know this, you can't unsee the cut being where it is.
Mm-hmm.
Remember at the end when he has the swinging thing with the henchman, and he says, "Hey guys, nap time," and he lets it go, and the camera cuts right before it hits them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Before the camera cut and they decided to tone the scene down, they got decapitated.
Like Owen Wilson in House on Haunted Hill? Or The Haunting?
Yeah. And then there was a moment, and this one's actually really funny, and I almost wish they kept it, but apparently I don't know if they filmed it or not, because they filmed the payoff to it, so I'm imagining they probably did, but they took it out because they thought it was way overboard. There's the little side quest going on where he's trying to get that bird.
Mm-hmm. I love that you called it a side quest. I mean, it is, but...
And there was a bit where after the chase, after Dan Marino gets kidnapped,
mm-hmm.
his car like flips. And then when it's done flipping, he just does like a whoosh, and then goes on.
Yeah.
That sigh of relief was supposed to follow a dream sequence that happened when he went unconscious when his car flipped.
Oh.
And this dream sequence was after the car flips, the bird lands on it, and when he goes out to get it, it's a spoof of the birds, and he gets attacked and ripped apart by a flock of birds.
That's hilarious. I wish that would have been in there.
But apparently it was like really gory and over the top, so they took it out. It's like the fact that it would have been really gory and over the top makes it funnier.
Yeah.
Because it would have been like, what the hell is this? And then he wakes up from unconsciousness.
I'm surprised they didn't go ahead and go with that scene and just take the gore out, because that could have been funny in itself.
Yeah, and it's like, and it would have been, if they had kept that scene, it would have been perfectly in line if they also kept the scene of the henchman getting decapitated. There's one touch that almost feels like it's in that movie, because it's so over the top that it feels out of place, but it wouldn't have felt out of place in the movie with the bird reference of the decapitations.
Mm-hmm.
Does it not seem out of place, over the top when he catches the bullet in his teeth?
Yeah.
It's like, where the hell does that come from? Oh, but I love that the movie works just as it is, but it's almost like with those scenes, it's true. The tone would have been totally different.
Yeah.
Like, it makes you wonder what else would have been in the original script if the scenes like that over the top were also in it.
Yeah.
So, is there anything we haven't touched on before we get to the twist?
I think one thing that these movies suffer from, and I think it happens to both of them, is everyone around him feels so bland because he's so outlandish.
Yeah, it almost feels like other characters barely exist in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, easily the most interesting character apart from him is Ray Finkel, and we don't get to see him as Ray Finkel ever.
Yeah.
And
even then, when he tries to reveal it, he has to try several times.
Yeah, so is this our transition into talking about the twist?
Yeah.
Well, for starters, good on them for how they pulled this off, because I never noticed for the longest time, I think until I read about it, that the picture of Ray Finkel is Sean Young. Like,
really?
Like, in costume.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then, but then you think back and you're like, well, yeah, who else would that have been?
Yeah.
It's like, it's such a crucial character. And so I do love, apparently they were filmed so close together that the Crying Game references were very last minute.
Huh.
Because, like, it was while they were in production, the Crying Game even came out.
Yeah.
But then it's like, that was the case where it was the reverse, because obviously I saw this first.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, the first time I saw the Crying Game, I went in blind. I didn't know the twist.
Mm-hmm.
So Jay Davidson performs the song "The Crying Game" in the movie. And I was like, "That's that song from Ace Ventura," and I did not put it. I did not put it together. And then when the twist happened, it was like, "Oh shit!" And then I still didn't put it together. And then the song plays again during the climax of The Crying Game, and I was like, "Yep, I get it." And I love also, I don't even know if this was intentional. This may just be a coincidence. The fact that Jay Davidson was male playing who is thought to be female in The Crying Game. They wanted to hide the twist, so Jay Davidson's name is spelled Jaye to make it seem ambiguous. Like, you could believe it's an actress when you see his name in the credits.
Yeah.
Same for Sean Young, just the reverse.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if that's a coincidence or not.
I would say it's a coincidence.
It's like, what a perfect coincidence. So, there may have possibly been a time where, because for the longest time, because I didn't see Blade Runner for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So for the longest time, this is the only thing I knew Sean Young for. Now, I can't remember for sure, but I want to say there was a time where I wasn't sure
Mm-hmm.
what Sean Young's gender was because of this movie. But while we're walking a fine line here, obviously it goes without saying this was met with controversy.
Yeah.
And it's still met with controversy now because of the way it's handled. And I get that it's of its era. It's 1994. Things were seen differently, and humor was certainly much different.
Yeah.
But Tom Shadyac tried to explain this, and I'm not entirely sure his explanation is totally viable.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously it could be seen as offensive now that as soon as Ace finds out that Einhorn is a man, there is a whole montage of him reacting to this in the most over-the-top, over-dramatic way.
Yeah.
He sets his clothes on fire. He plunges his face. He's puking.
He takes a shower and curls in the corner and cries.
And Tom Shadyak's argument was, it's not like making fun of trans people or saying that they're disgusting. The joke is that Ace is that fragile about it. Which you could probably buy if not for when this scene happens again with all of the cops in the room.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a funny joke that they all made out with Einhorn apparently at some point.
Yeah.
But that they react with disgust is where the controversy lies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily like, I don't think it's like that they react in that way, like that they feel almost violated. It's that the reactions are so over the top.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess just make of that what you will. No, is that pretty much how you feel about it also, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to judge products of their time by today's standards. If you did, Tarantino wouldn't have a career.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, you want to go out and say like, oh man, it's like so incredibly offensive, but I'd almost feel like disingenuous doing that because it's like, yeah.
See, the point to me is, I don't want to go back in time and point at a movie and be like, oh God. I would rather look at it and go, hey, look how far we've come.
Yeah, because this goes into another controversy we're looking at now, where everything's getting like they're taking scenes out of stuff or taking episodes out of TV shows and stuff like that. But that's a whole other thing. But
That's not for discussion during an Ace Ventura video. So let's go back to some dicking off. After that scene, I love when he's watching her and he's just shoving the gum in his mouth.
My favorite part of the gum thing is that we see the repercussions of this, of him trying to get rid of it with one sheet of paper. Because like we could have just not seen him getting rid of the gum. The gum bit, him putting it in, could have been its own joke. But I love that we see him having to try to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's his own payoff.
There's a lot of little funny things that go on. Like when he's at Udo Kerr's party and he's walking through and the little orchestra, well, it's not really an orchestra, it's the little like string band is playing. And as he walks by, he just pulls one of their arms too far. And it's never acknowledged. It's just the wrong note hits, and then they go back to what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's one of those cases also kind of like the talking out of the ass thing, where this may totally be on purpose. I don't know. The movie has enough clever bouts to where I think it could be on purpose.
Okay.
Ace at this party is a fish out of water moment.
Yeah.
And it plays up in a way to where it seems like it's such an obvious concept. It shouldn't be as funny still as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it is. Him making faces at the guy with food in his mouth is juvenile humor that I should have grown out of a long time ago. But when Carrie does it, it is still funny to me today.
One of my favorite scenes of the party is at the very beginning, whenever the guy answers the door and he starts making the Love Boat references.
Because he just goes right into being not the way he's supposed to be in this moment.
Yeah. We go straight. He sees it and he's like, "Oh, this is a time to dick off."
And so I think we see a lot of in the sequel too. He is just he's a great detective, but he is absolutely incapable of disguising himself.
Yeah.
And then there's endless quotes everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's what could have been a great moment when we started this video. Every single time, I think, since we've known this movie, so basically our entire lives,
Mm-hmm.
anytime we hear the phrase, what's the password, me or you will always say New England clam chowder.
Mm-hmm.
And Zoom fucked us over when Zoom could have really shined today. Because every time you set up a Zoom meeting, there is a password that you can make. And you tried to make the password to the meeting New England clam chowder, and it wouldn't let you.
Yeah, it didn't fit. There wasn't enough spaces. I tried that. I tried Bumblebee Tuna.
Like, damn, Zoom, you really failed us on that one. That would have been perfect. That whole joke was leading up to that moment, and you dropped the ball, Zoom. No, you didn't drop the ball. You placed it places in. We didn't even talk about Ray Finkel's parents.
No.
How perfect. I mean, his dad is great. I love the moment with, I'm looking for Ray Finkel in a pair of shorts.
Yeah.
But I mean, how perfect is Alice Drummond in this? I think one of the more quoted lines from this movie is, Dan Marino should die of gonorrhea and rot in hell. Would you like a cookie? You can't say one or the other. It's both together, you have to say.
Yeah. And I love that his parents are oblivious to how psychotic everything looks around them.
Well, she is anyway.
Yeah.
But
when she says something like he should die of gonorrhea and rot in hell, is she really that oblivious?
Yeah. It's like, come to think of it, where does Ray Finkel get these psychotic tendencies, I wonder?
I mean, it makes sense because the mom says that and the dad answers the door with a shotgun.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that is explained by him asking Ace if he's another one of those reporter people.
Yeah.
And they probably had to fight off like looters that were pissed off that Finkel missed the kick. Yeah. So the dad is probably justified.
It's kind of a miracle they still live in that house.
Yeah.
But yeah, God forbid Ray Finkel's room change.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep it exactly the way it was.
And I will always be a sucker for the person acting outlandish and the person that's playing it straight and it doesn't affect them in any way. I'm looking at David Margulies. He's the doctor at the mental health center.
Because he basically plays it as if he's seen this before many, many times.
Yeah.
This particular behavior in itself. And that's another one of those moments also where it's like it sets up, like it's moving the plot along that he has to come to this place to look for this specific information.
Mm-hmm.
But they give not just Ace, but Jim Carrey this whole segment to just fuck around with this joke.
Yeah.
Until he gets down to business. And it's like we're getting the story and that at the same time. And that's where the beauty of it lies. Because a lot of comedies can't find when they want to do one and when they want to do the other.
Yeah, he does a lot of dicking off, but it does serve the plot and keeps the plot moving. Because usually he's either dicking off because he's looking for something that's there, or he finds something that leads him to his next step through his dicking off. Like when he tries to hide in the cardboard box.
And right before that, we have the bubble wrap bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love him trying to hide in the box. And I think it's even funnier that it leads to something significant.
Let's not forget that the way he even gets into the room to separate himself from Courtney Cox and David Margulies is to take a halftime and slam his face into the little bench there.
And I feel like we're supposed to be under the impression that was pre-planned because she takes the cue and says, he'll be good for 20 minutes. I would have kind of liked to have seen the moment where, did he just eventually catch up with them, or did they come back in 20 minutes and he had repositioned himself?
I also love the fact that we don't get a scene of Ace explaining the plan. We just know he has one. So we don't have to watch him discuss it first. We just see it in action.
It gets to speak up on us.
Yeah.
It's even a reveal. It like pans up him. Oh.
I love that there's all the controversy with Einhorn's reveal, but there's no controversy there.
I was just gonna say, I feel like there's something there, but yeah. I think that's the thing also, is it's just kind of, yeah, like I said, like with just this movie being ingrained in our memories since we could make memories, it's just hard to distinguish that stuff at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is always better to be able to acknowledge it after the fact, but it's the fact that it still works as comedy also, I think, speaks to what they were able to pull off.
You know, we have neglected one thing through this whole video. All of this dicking off that we're talking about, all this great detective work is being done with that hairdo.
Yeah. Which comes into play actually many times. Like, I don't know that his hair is ever actually addressed in the movie.
But it is in the sequel when Tommy Davidson messes with it.
Yeah, it is multiple times. The projector comes to mind as well.
But then again, it's self-addressed. It's just, oh, this is even funnier because his hair is in the way.
Yeah, the most blatant way it's addressed is on the cover, the tagline.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what the tagline is?
Of the first or the second?
The second.
No.
It's new animals, new adventure, same hair. So is that, do you have any last thoughts on the first one before we transition? Because we're kind of already in the second one.
No, just overall, I just rewatched it not too long ago. It's still funnier than hell.
Yeah, and really is a great balance, the actual mystery of it versus the comedy and the slapstick and all that stuff, and how they balance the two out.
Mm-hmm. And I love how they don't make him stupid. He really is just unconventional.
So there's
there's been a lot of movies out there where they're like, this person's unconventional, but they're actually stupid. He's not stupid. He really is unconventional.
I want to say I read somewhere that was Carrey's call, because apparently he was originally supposed to be just a flat-out idiot.
Yeah.
And then, like, when Carrey kind of started adapting the character to him, the character started to become much smarter.
I think it works better with Ace as being a good detective. I like that he doesn't, a lot of times he does kind of back into what he's looking for, but I love that he has the presence of mind to be in the right place to back into it when it happens.
Yeah, because if he was a complete and total idiot, I almost shudder to think how the story would have moved along. Like, how convoluted it would have been, and how to maybe focus on just the slapstick by itself it would have been.
It's nice that a movie like this, our main protagonist is moving along the plot purposefully.
Yeah. And only occasionally accidentally, like hiding in the cardboard box. But then again, are we to assume that even if he didn't have a moment where he had to hide in the cardboard box, because he was in that room looking around, he would have found it eventually?
Yeah.
But it's a plus that he got to find it in a comedic fashion.
And you find that out whenever that's kind of addressed in the sequel, because he does get all this time to investigate that sacred room that the bats kept in. And just before he leaves, he decides to just tip over the cage, and that's when he finds what he's looking for.
So as we transition into the second movie,
Mm-hmm.
obviously we've got some changes here with behind the scenes. Like Steve Odekirk is our writer and director.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a consultant on the first movie or something.
Yeah.
Have you heard all the stuff about how Carrie was like really unhappy with this movie, the second one?
Yeah.
Well, apparently for starters, he didn't even want to do it, but
Mm-hmm.
he had a contract that said he had to.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was apparently he had a lot of disagreements with Odekirk, where I guess Carrie hated the idea that Ace was afraid of the bat, or afraid of bats in general.
Yeah.
He's like, at the very least, make him allergic or something. But
Yeah.
Odekirk basically fought him on it, and it's just he's afraid of bats. And
Yeah,
I guess,
it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
yeah. And on top of that, I think Carrie also said he just found it to be a cheap joke.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like the easiest joke in the movie that whenever the bat is there, he just like turns away.
Yeah. To the point where Simon Callow uses that to actually get out of a situation.
But it is also kind of a funny thing of Ace Ventura being afraid of bats,
Mm-hmm.
given that this is the same year as Batman Forever.
Yeah.
So there is. I don't think it's what Odekirk had in mind, but it's funny enough in retrospect.
One thing that I do like that this movie does is there's callbacks to the original. You've got the flipping car. You've got his alrighty then. The one time that he does a jungle call out of his ass. But I kind of have to respect this movie for going in a totally different direction and trying to tackle some new jokes.
Yeah, so, some of the other stuff we get that's kind of repeated is the moment I love it in this movie as well. When he says everything to Simon Callow and then he rewinds.
Yeah.
It's basically the same joke as the slow-mo and instant replay on when he runs into David Margulies and he's doing the football thing.
Yeah.
And then the moment, the montage where he's following Bob Gunn around is basically a retread of the Ring montage.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were saying, what you mentioned the car. I do have to mention.
There's one thing I have to go back to also when you're done.
I think one of the funniest moments in the movie to me. It's one of the best cuts to something ever.
Okay.
We set it up with the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang scene,
Mm-hmm.
which has always been hysterical. And then he turns the car and he flips all the way to his parking spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love the way this is paid off when he has to go back there at the end when he has the epiphany about the guano. And it just cuts to him in mid-flip on his way back.
I thought you were going to say, there's a couple things that I love about that scene. First of all, I love when we first get the shot of him and he's bouncing around in the car. And I love the look we get from Ian McNeice. And then we pay that off by showing them on a totally flat road.
Yeah.
It's that thing that you always talk about where there's layered payoffs.
It's the simple shit like that that's always the most gold.
Like whenever he lands the car and he gets out, like he's happy with how he's so in the spot, but when he opens the car door, he just slams it to the car beside him.
I keep forgetting. I always think that's a joke in the first one, but that never happened until the second one.
But you were talking about how the montage where he's following Bob Gunton is kind of a retread of the Ring thing. There's one thing that I love that dawned on me last night, though. If you think about the montage, he talks about being a master of disguise, and he's literally just himself in these environments. And then we get to the last part, and he has this entire mechanical rhino that he's just pulled out of nowhere. And then we figure out why he doesn't go with that stuff, because it breaks. And I love the point that it's so advanced that when he pulls down the wire in a panic, like sirens go off. Like it's like a full-on military bunker response.
Notice how there's something we didn't mention in the first movie that's a great joke as well. Once again, it's part of the simple shit. That's just gold for being simple.
Mm-hmm.
In the Rhino, a fan is his downfall.
Yeah.
Because it just stops working at the worst time. But I love that a fan actually helps him in the first movie. But when I say helps him, remember, it's when he's in the raft and he has to get to the ladder. And he's got the tiny little personal fan that takes him an inch and a half to the ladder.
He should have taken that with him in the Rhino.
Yeah. And yeah, well, I've heard a lot of people, for some reason, like lately, a lot of people have said that, like, no matter how you feel about the second Ace Ventura movie, the Rhino is a classic bit.
There's a lot of funny stuff that goes on in the sequel. The story's not as good. The story definitely suffers, but there's a lot of prime dicking off going on and a lot of funny stuff that happens. Like whenever he's interrogating Bob Gunton, I love his torture method.
Yeah.
Both of them.
I have to come back to the Rhino because I have to give somebody credit.
Okay.
I mean, the joke is great. First off, I just love like you know, like the line of it gets hot in these rhinos or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite bit is just warm. But then the way this escalates to him finding one passage and what this gets mistaken for.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it escalates more and more the more he's trying to force his way out of it, and we see this horrific image of his face trying to come through. But the person that really deserves credit for this scene is the actress that's watching this happen with her family.
Yeah.
Because obviously this actress had to have known what the setup of the scene was and what she was reacting to.
Mm-hmm.
But the sincerity in her voice and the beauty that she's clearly seeing in her eyes as she says the line, "The mother rhino is giving birth." That line and the way she says it does so much for why this scene is so funny. Because I think that's her only line. Because they're all kind of talking at once when they run away. So there's another thing I always wondered when you were talking about references to the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Was are we under the impression it's because he knows animals? When he's first introduced to Guano and he's licking the plate and he says, "Why does that sound familiar?"
Yeah.
It's like probably because he has knowledge of animals.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I took that as a reference to Aguado from the first movie, like his little sworn enemy in the police force.
I never thought about that, but that does make sense.
Yeah, it's like I have no idea if that's what they were going for, if it's just he knew before what Guano was and just forgot.
That would make sense if he was afraid of bats. He wouldn't care to remember.
Yeah. And it's another scene. There's so many more scenes in this of him taking off the food.
Mm-hmm. Going back to him being afraid of bats, the one thing that I think is funny that comes from it is when he goes in the caves.
And I think Ian McNeice has that perfect delivery of "there is nothing."
Ian McNeice is his responses to what goes on really. It's my person reacts straightly to somebody being outlandish that I find funny. Ian McNeice is perfect at that in this.
Yeah, he's the perfect straight man.
Yeah, like at the end, whenever Ace is crawling around the floor, he's like, Greenwald, hit the lights. And Ian McNeish doesn't move, he just watches him.
During the fucking day. Another one I always loved.
With Diamond Callow standing right there.
That is, you would think it wouldn't be, but it actually works that there's so many straight men in this.
Mm-hmm.
Because he gets to play off Courtney Cox mostly in the first movie, but in this one,
he still gets his moments with Tone Loc and Einhorn and
yeah. But in this one, like, everybody's the straight man to it, except maybe what's his buddy's name, Uda.
The one that's the chief's son.
the one where he's like, I'll bet he's gone for help right now. Hello, Ace. But another way I loved, even when he's playing the straight man, is the scene on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
When he's doing the Twilight Zone bit, and he's doing the Shatner impression. And he's like, I'm sorry, you were saying? And we hear him start from the beginning all over again. after there's been a dissolve in the sunflower seeds to show how long this has been going on. This is a movie that I have found really seems to draw people in an interesting way. Or maybe just us. I have a couple of examples as why I say that.
Okay.
First of all, I hadn't seen the movie in the longest time. And then, like, in 5th or 6th grade, my best friend at the time was saying the Bumblebee Tuna line all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And after, like, the 50th time he said that line in class, I was like, I should try to revisit that movie. And I got it on VHS at Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching it again. And so he basically, by doing that, pulled me into this movie, and I haven't left since.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember this or not. I kind of hope you do. This was when my bedroom was over here and yours was over here. And you were playing video games while I was watching the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you hated being bothered when you were playing video games. You hated pausing games. You hated any of that sort of thing.
Still do.
So I was watching the movie, and we got to the Monopoly guy scene. And it was the moment when he says, activist, yes, and does that laugh, and then Ace mimics him, very exaggerated.
There's the mimicry that you love.
So I rewound that moment. There's the whole scene, but I just rewound to the moment of him saying activist, yes, and then Ace mimicking him.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and got you mid-video game, and I just said, you need to come and have a look at this. So you were kind of like, ugh. So you're like, hold on. And then you pause the game, and you come into the room, and I show you the activist yes scene, and then Ace's exaggerated mimic. And you found it so funny, you watched the rest of the movie with me. Like I said, I don't know if you remember this.
No.
Because the scene it's a scene that keeps on giving.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it starts. Because I was a little disappointed in one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the moment when he sees them coming down the stairs. And she's wearing that thing. And what she's wearing makes him gasp when he sees them.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is before we even see them, he gasps, and then we cut to them.
Mm-hmm.
Before it occurred to me he's gasping at what she's wearing, I was assuming he was gasping at the appearance of the Monopoly guy. which is way funnier. That guy's been in a lot of stuff. Do you know who the Monopoly guy is?
No.
In the same year as this movie, he was the sloth victim in 7. And he was Bane in Batman and Robin before he grew into Chief Swenson.
Oh, that's great.
You can tell now, can't you? So that's what I mean when I say at least us. We got sucked into this movie very easily. It just took my friend saying the Bumblebee tuna line for me to say I should watch that again, and it took me showing you the activist gift scene for you to watch the rest of the movie.
You're talking about the Bumblebee tuna thing. I just want to bring up that when I rewatched it last night, something that I don't know why I found it so funny at the time, but I did, was when he first goes to the village and he learns about the guy standing on the little pole and he shakes it. It says earthquake test. And the guy survives. I love later, after this whole festival has happened, he's sitting by himself, still fucking with this guy.
I love that it's revealed so late in the scene. It just looks like he's shooting them into the abyss, and then like towards the end of the scene, it's finally revealed that it's the guy.
Yeah.
And interesting to look back on now, it has been for some time because this is 16 years after this fact.
Hmm.
Yes, that is Oscar nominee Sophie Okonedo that he's talking to. So, yes, I feel like there's other things I need to touch on here. Anything else coming to you?
Just all the side dicking off that's going on, like when he plays the drums on the mushrooms.
Yeah.
When he keeps giving Greenwald a flat tire.
And he seems to be enjoying it, weirdly enough.
And I love the scene where the goal is to not get caught by the other tribe. And he decides to put on this outlandish mask and just do this dance.
That's the very scene I was referring to when I said he's a great detective, but he's terrible at disguising himself.
Would you count the rhino as a terrible disguise, or just a disguise that goes awry?
He apparently pulled it off because that family was totally convinced.
Yeah, and Bob Gunton and the guy he was talking to were completely oblivious.
There's the whole Chicago joke.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny enough, what's your favorite bit of the Chicago joke through the whole movie?
I don't know. Maybe the first time he realizes it. Like when after Greenwald tells him what's going on, just how it dawns on him of what he's going to be able to do with that.
And there's the Bob Gunton reference because he says Shawshank Redemption at one point.
Yeah.
It's a hilarious joke that he's faking them out. And then when the chief goes all the way down, he's just like, nope, you're out. And then he actually starts to walk out of there. That's not my favorite Chicago joke.
Okay.
My favorite one is towards the end when he's there with his buddy and he says it. And when he says
it, and when he comes back up and he just says, "Hi, welcome back."
There's almost contempt in his delivery. Welcome back.
It is kind of fun that in the first one, Ace is kind of the simple one of everybody, and we get to see Ace reply or interact with someone that's even simpler than him. For moments like that. Or whenever he comes back, he's the hello Ace that you like. And he comes in and he's like, "They got me too." And Ace just responds with, "Don't beat yourself up about it."
I love that dude. I love his performance. He's so happy all the time.
And he receives the "Hi, welcome back."
I think we pretty much determined that it is the lesser movie,
Mm-hmm.
and it overall doesn't have the best reputation as far as I see. It's one of those cases where it's a lot like Ghostbusters 2, in the sense of we always grew up just watching the both of them, thinking nothing of it, and it was only later that I learned that the sequel is thought of as as inferior as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember there was a long time there in that period I was talking about where I watched the second one a lot, like a lot more than the first one. But there was also a period before that where all I watched was the first one. And I think over the years it's kind of balanced itself out. So I've probably seen them around the same amount of times, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So is there one you think you've seen more than the other?
No, I'd say it's probably about even. I don't think the twist in the second one is good either because, well, it's essentially the same twist without Simon Callow being a woman.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where at least Einhorn is throughout the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
Simon Cowell is there just little enough that it's like, who else was it going to be?
Yeah.
So, and you got like, Bruce Spence in there. Bruce Spence from The Road Warrior is one of the henchmen. The guy that's getting his balls eaten on the projector.
What do you think of the projector room scene as a whole?
I love it. But weirdly enough, like when I was a kid, I really loved the eating the balls and the Ohio Silver away and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
As the years have gone on, easily the funniest bit is the very first part where he just sits in front of it.
The cut to it. The cut to his head in front of it.
He's so oblivious too. Like he's sitting down, like genuinely intrigued. Like, okay, let's see what's going on here. And it's just...
It's when he moves and he realizes he could put his hands up there. Like it makes you wonder, knowing Ace, if he hadn't sat in front of the projector first, would he have even thought to do the rest of it?
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is I think what makes it so funny that he treats the projector that way is that when he gets caught sitting in front of it, he's genuinely embarrassed.
Yeah.
Then we just see the hand raise. But it is that case also where when Simon Callow snaps and he like pulls his hand away, the way he recoils gives me the sense of he did that because he could not control himself. Like he saw the opportunity and in his actual core of his being had to do that.
Now, normally with that projector room scene, I wouldn't have thought it was as funny to cut to him actually doing it. But Jim Carrey's face while he's doing it makes that cut worth it.
Isn't it only one cut?
Yes.
Until he pulls away.
Yeah.
All right. So does that pretty much wrap this whole thing up?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to touch on.
But yeah, the moral of the story is we prefer the first one. The first one's much more clever. First one's mystery is more interesting. The way it goes about itself is less convoluted.
I think if we didn't have the first one, I think the second one might have been that scenario you were talking about that I don't know that I think it might have affected The Mask and Dumb and Dumber if they made the sequel first.
Yeah, because it almost seems like when you just hear the concept that like out in the jungles is where he would be.
Yeah.
What's funny is that he's out of place in like regular civilization. It's like that's why I think like doing like having to do a sequel, it probably would have been funnier to like obviously it makes sense to make him change location because you're changing it up and not just doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you had a whole movie of him trying to get into the police academy as the sequel, I feel like you could have had something there.
Yeah.
Like it might have been too similar to his interactions with the cops, like Aguado and Einhorn and all them. But and if he was there, we could have brought Tone Loc back. But we didn't, so that's a bummer. Well, to Tone Loc's credit, he did Heat the same year as Ace Ventura 2, so he He's the one that scored over everybody.
Yeah.
While Jim Carrey was doing a movie he did not want to do, Tone Loc was acting across Pacino in a Michael Mann movie.
And Courtney Cox was back on Friends.
So, moral of the story is good for you, Tone Loc. So, yeah. So is that where we end this?
Would you ever, if he decided to do it, would you watch an Ace Ventura movie that was written and directed by Jim Carrey himself?
It's hard to say because that would never happen. But, and I feel like after the reception of Dumb and Dumber 2 and the quality of Dumb and Dumber 2, makes it even more like unlikely than it already was. But at least, you know,
if they decided they wanted to do it again, who would you pick to be Ace Ventura out of today's actors? I have an easy choice.
Who's that?
I would love to see Ace Ventura played by James Franco.
Where you could get somebody that can play comedic and straight.
Yes. Is James Franco not perfect for that?
Yeah, that'd be difficult. Like it'd almost be sacrilege that while we still have Jim Carrey, if somebody else played Ace Ventura, that would be. I don't even know.
But if it had to be somebody, I would pursue James Franco.
But I was thinking, and I didn't have anybody in mind, but I was thinking in that similar direction where it would have to be somebody that can do comedy and straight.
Yeah.
So weirdly enough, because you heard the Anthony Hopkins story, right?
No.
Where Jim Carrey, like, I don't know how long after this, probably in the late 90s or something, had lunch with Anthony Hopkins.
I would love to have been a fly on the wall at that lunch.
Because I think Anthony Hopkins was a fan of his, and I think just contacted him and asked him to lunch. I think is how it went down.
Dude, now I want to imagine Anthony Hopkins chilling on his sofa, just laughing at Jim Carrey movies.
And they were talking about techniques, and Carrey was talking about how he based Ace Ventura on birds, like smart birds, like the way he walks and moves and all that.
Mm-hmm. His walk is very hilarious.
And Hopkins was like, "Oh my God, I kind of did the same thing with basing it on animals because I based Hannibal Lecter on reptiles."
Mm-hmm.
And he started to give an example. And Carrey said it was fucking wild because while they were sitting there at the lunch table, he saw Anthony Hopkins turn into Hannibal Lecter. Like while they were just discussing Ace Ventura and birds, he was like, "Oh, I've done the same thing," and he did Hannibal Lecter. I love how complimentary Anthony Hopkins is. I heard after Breaking Bad ended, apparently he sent Bryan Cranston a personal letter saying it was the best acting he had ever seen.
Hang on. I know there's that clip of him going around where like he's at like a symphony for his birthday and they play a piece that he wrote and he's just like overjoyed about it.
Yeah, because it had like never been played before, hadn't
it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he seems like a nice guy.
So is that line the foreshadow to our next one? We didn't really decide if it was going to be our next one or not, but it could be.
Are you thinking of, well, he seems like a nice guy?
There was another one I had in mind, but you don't have access to one of the movies. But hopefully we can get around to that one at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to lend it to you like I did Crank, if we can work that out. But
mm-hmm.
Did
you get that back yet?
I don't think so.
It's in Parkersburg.
Oh, okay.
I sent it back with my visitor. So he's supposed to drop it off in the mailbox or to you or whatever.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right. So
yeah, we might be able to be sold on that idea. We shouldn't have to pump the brakes on it just yet.
We just name dropped the movie because it matches the director of one of the last movies that we did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then if that's
Hope you like a little Brian Dennehy in your diet.
Yeah, the late Brian Dennehy.
In the movie or real life?
Both.
When did that happen?
This year.
What?
You didn't know we lost Brian Dennehy?
No, I didn't.
It was like a couple or a few months ago.
No kidding.
Well, that's a downer to end on, but
yeah, it is. Well, thanks for doing the video with me. By the way, Brian Dennehy's dead. I'll see you later. That's pretty much how that went down.
All right. Well, if you don't have any more downers to add, anything you want to say about Kelly Preston while we're here?
No. No.
All right.
In the words of old Captain America, no, I don't think I will.
Well, rest in peace, all the people we've lost. I guess that's it for this comedy.
Joel Schumacher,
Yeah.
Carl Reiner. Has anybody checked on Mel Brooks?
He released a statement about Carl Reiner.
Because I'm worried that like Mel Brooks is going to die of a broken heart.
Yeah.
Man, we need to do something. We need to do something related to Carl Reiner. We need to talk about the man with two brains.
I'd be down for that.
Yeah, we need to do that. We need to honor Carl Reiner.
I've got the man with two brains and a 2-pack with my blue heaven.
I got it. What if we did the man with two brains and the jerk?
Yeah.
Let's do that next.
All right. That's the double feature we had at Dad's so many times. All right, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably what our next two planned then.
Probably, yeah.
All right. So on that note, let's go ahead and finish this.
All right. Before any more downers.
All right, I guess that's it.